Picture this. It's 1998. The Spice Girls are, like, on top of the world. They signed this massive deal with a scooter company that seems like a perfect match. But that dream deal, it completely crashed and burned, leading to a landmark court case that all came down to a single unspoken promise.
You know the line, right? Friendship never ends. I mean, that wasn't just a catchy lyric. It was their entire brand, their whole mantra. And it was a promise they weren't just selling to fans, they were selling it to massive corporations.
So what happens when that friendship does end? Well, when you've got millions of dollars on the line, it's not just a bummer, it can actually be a breach of contract, even if the contract says absolutely nothing about friendship. And this is the story of how the Spice Girls learned that lesson the hard way.
All right, so let's set the scene. First up, girl power meets horsepower. So their whole brand, their entire image was built on these 5 very distinct personalities, right? You had scary, sporty, baby, posh, and ginger. This specific group of 5, that wasn't just the band's lineup, it was the product. Every single poster, every music video, it hammered home this one simple idea. There are 5 of them, period.
So of course, a company like Aprilia wanted in on this. They were a scooter manufacturer, and they wanted to capitalize on this global craze. The plan was to release a whole line of Spice Sonic scooters, and the marketing was pretty simple, but, kind of brilliant. Feature all 5 Spice Girls, and link that image of fun and freedom, and yes, friendship, directly to their scooters. It was a massive, multi-million-dollar bet on girl power.
Okay, so the ink was barely even dry on that contract when the entire deal was about to just completely fall apart.
Okay, the timing here is absolutely everything. So, in March of '98, all 5 Spice Girls show up for this big promo photo shoot with Aprilia. They're all there, posing on the new scooters. Then, just 2 months later, bam, Jerry Halliwell announces she's leaving the group. Just like that, the 5 became 4.
For fans, this was heartbreaking, the end of an era. But for Aprilia, it was the start of a huge business and legal nightmare. Think about it. All of a sudden, every single piece of Aprilia's marketing, the posters, the TV commercials, the special edition scooters themselves, was completely useless. They were selling a 5-person band that didn't exist anymore. Their entire campaign was built on a product that had just fundamentally changed overnight.
So you can imagine, Aprilia was not happy. They were furious. They felt like they had been totally misled, sold a false bill of goods. And so they did what any company in that position would do. They took the group's company, Spice Girls Ltd., straight to court. And they wanted their money back. And then some.
Now this is where things get really interesting from a legal perspective. The Spice Girls lawyers, they pointed out a pretty simple fact. The contract never actually said all 5 members had to stay in the group for the whole year. So technically, no written rule was broken, which leads to the big question. How could Aprilia possibly sue, let alone win?
Well, Aprilia's lawyers had a very, very clever argument up their sleeve, and it had nothing to do with what was written down on paper. Yeah, their whole case didn't focus on the words in the contract at all. Instead, it was all about that photo shoot back in March. Aprilia argued that when all 5 members showed up to promote those scooters, that action was a statement all on its own.
Okay, so here's the crucial point. On one hand, you have the written contract. Nothing in there explicitly promised a 5-member group for the full year. But on the other hand, you have their actions. The very act of all 5 of them participating in that photo shoot implicitly promised it. They were actively creating the impression that the band Aprilia was paying millions for, the 5-member band, was the one they were going to get for the whole campaign. So, how can an action even be a statement? I mean, that might sound a little weird, right? But in the world of contract law, it's actually a really powerful and well-established idea. And this right here was the heart of Aprilia's entire case. It's a legal concept called misrepresentation by conduct. The argument was basically this. By showing up as a group of 5, knowing full well that one of them was about to leave, the Spice Girls essentially acted out a lie. Their behavior created a false impression that was just as powerful and just as misleading as any written statement could be. Okay, so let's break down their legal argument step by step. First, Aprilia had to argue that the group knew Gary was planning to leave. Second, despite knowing this, they all participated in the photo shoot anyway. Third, by doing so, they created an implicit promise of unity for the whole campaign. And boom, number 4. Therefore, their conduct itself was a misrepresentation. They were presenting a false reality to their business partner.
So the big question is, how did the court see all this? Did this pretty creative argument about an unspoken promise actually work?
Well, it turns out it did. The court completely sided with Aprilia. The judge found that Spice Girls Ltd. did know that Jerry Halliwell intended to leave, and by allowing all 5 of them to participate in that promotional material, they had absolutely made a misrepresentation by their conduct. In the end, their actions spoke way, way louder than the silence in their contract.
So what's the big takeaway from this whole 90s pop drama? It's actually a pretty fundamental business lesson. It proves that in the eyes of the law, what you do can be just as legally binding as what you write down in a contract. Your behavior, your conduct, can create promises. And you better believe those promises can be enforced in a court of law.
You know, this whole story leaves us with a final thought. This case isn't really just about celebrities and scooters. It's a powerful reminder that our actions are always sending a message. So it's worth asking yourself, what promises are you making without ever saying a single word?